I'm Jimmy Cipher. Let's rock. All right, top 10 guitar lesson myths. Number 1, in order to be a good guitarist, you must learn to read music off of a G clef or treble clef. So let's break this down, because this is one of those persistent things that, you know, certainly as I was learning guitar, you're beat over the head with, and while it has its place as a learning aid on the guitar, it's in my opinion one of those dreadful things that you can do to try to learn. So let's just start straight away with this. Here's why. Okay, on a clef, which was a language designed for the piano hundreds of years ago, it works great because you have a clef with your alphabetic notes on it, and let's say you're looking at middle C, and it says play middle C. Well, middle C is only one place on a piano, C4 in the middle of the keyboard. Okay, on a acoustic guitar or any guitar, that's middle C, that's middle C, that's middle C, that's middle C, that's middle C. Okay, if you take C3 here, you can tap that harmonic and get middle C. You can bend up from B flat to your middle C right there, and so on. There's all kinds of ways to generate overtone harmonics and everything else. So the question is, well, golly gee, where on earth am I supposed to play that? Well, you would have to look at the context of all the notes around you, make decisions on the finger pattern or playability that seem to make the most logical sense, and then from there make a guesstimate on where the best place on the board is to play it. That doesn't even get into arrangement situations such as that brighter middle C on the second string I just played might not be the best while the singer is singing the verse, because those high overtones will stomp on his voice, so you might want to put it somewhere else. You can see where this is going. As a beginner, you're totally lost on this sort of thing, and so it's not surprising at all that when you go into one of these places that insist that you read music for guitar off of a 300-year-old language for piano or older, who knows, no wonder you're going to have problems, and you sit there for months doing Mary I Had a Little Lamb or simple nursery rhymes or something like that. Another thing with these books is that they print all of this stuff in there because it predates intellectual property, so they don't have to pay royalties when they print that stuff. If you put Led Zeppelin in the book, you got to pay Led Zeppelin, so it cuts into their profits. The reality is, when Eddie Van Halen came out, here's the book right here, that was when things started to change, as he talks about in his Smithsonian interview out this year, which I'll put a link to below. With his two-hand tapping technique and everything that he was doing, all these innovative sounds he was getting from his hands, they didn't even have a language for it. So they had to create a whole new system just to explain what he was doing. That system actually is guitar tab, which follows right down here, okay? And it parallels the clef underneath and tells you the fret number and string that you're supposed to play things on. This is essential when learning guitar if you ever hope to get anywhere in a reasonable amount of time, and also to follow the types of music that's being played now at a very high level of sophistication and technical skill. So then I'm getting Guitar World magazine over the years, and I look in it one month, and lo and behold, here is the transcriptions now, and the clef is gone. and all you have is the guitar tab and the rhythmic information underneath, 8th notes, 16th notes, and so on. So Guitar World magazine is now saying you don't even need the clef to learn guitar. In fact, it's just taking up space in their magazine, so they got rid of it. You can imagine if your goal was to become a great American English novelist, and someone told you, well, the first thing that you should do is go to Japan and learn Japanese. Well, that might be great when you have a publishing deal from Random House and you're going to see your Japanese fans, or if you're a superstar like Marty Friedman in Japan, you might want to know a lot of Japanese for that job. Way to go, Marty. But when you're learning, you want the language for guitar that helps you learn the most on the instrument you've chosen. That's what piano players sure did. They're following a language written for them. Now, as you go along, if once you're great at guitar, you want to work with other musicians, such as keyboard players, horn players, or whoever, and you have to score on for them and communicate with them, then yes, it's great to be able to read that stuff. But you have to think about the long list of iconic guitar players who can't read a note. Eddie Van Halen, again, was a concert pianist as a kid for classical music, doesn't read on guitar. Eric Johnson reads little, if at all, on guitar, reads very well on keyboards. Jimi Hendrix never read a note. Stevie Ray Vaughan never read a note. B.B. King, Clapton, the list, Angus Young, the list goes on and on. Not only that, but the ones who didn't tend to be some of the most highly innovative players who did it all on their own and came up with their own style of playing. One of the other interesting things to think about is in terms of what I call rhythmic dialects, the certain feels of different music. So for example, Brazilian music, I played with a great percussionist some time ago by the name of Miguel Castro, who explained to me Brazilian rhythms that were in some of my dance music on the guitar I was playing over them, over EDM. And he said, well, you're playing 16ths, but what's making it work is this 16th is a little longer than the others. Not enough to make it a dotted, just a little bit longer. Roots American blues will actually drag typically behind the beat, so will funk, so will soul. Hard rock tends to push ahead of the beat, especially the snare. You can even see it on paper sometimes where it will actually be a discrete note value, a 16th note ahead of the measure line or something, but very often not. And Red House is a really good one, Jimi Hendrix's Red House, because every time they publish it in the guitar magazines, they go, okay, well, this is as close as we can get it, but if you play it like what it says here, well, it's not going to sound like Hendrix, so you really need to listen to the record. Well, that's kind of saying we don't really have a language for this now, do we? Not really. It's not going to capture the vibe of it, so you got to listen to the record. So whenever somebody's telling you that the best way to learn guitar is to read off of a notation system that was developed for piano and to use that in lieu of recordings, when all of the artists that you're trying to replicate or play something in that style are not even doing that at all, right? Rock and roll was basically the fusion of Americana, Appalachian country, and Mississippi Delta blues, that comes together in Tupelo, and voila, you've got Elvis. None of that was done in a conservatory with these discrete rhythmic values. It's not going to sound like that, the way that you want it. This is all of classic rock, blues, funk, soul. It's only when you get into the Pro Tools era, modern prog metal, very classically influenced things, that it becomes this very metronomically precise thing. You always want to learn in the way that the guitarist that you aspire to sound like learned guitar. And sometimes that means you will wind up reading off that clef for certain purposes. If you're Brian Setzer and you're scoring for your 16-piece horn orchestra, certainly you need to. If you're AC/DC or the Ramones, you're a lot more concerned with just getting out there and playing that blues scale with a lot of guts. So it's really, really important to determine your goal and what you're ultimately wanting to do. If you're wanting to be a studio musician, of course you eventually need to learn to read for those jobs. If you're playing in a punk band, probably not. Jamie Cypher out.